Welcome to the Williston Development Review Board meeting of April 14th, 2026. This meeting will now come to order at 7 p.m. My name is Nate Andrews, Chair of the DRB. Please silence your phones and devices. For Zoom technical questions, contact planning staff through Zoom chat. I'll begin by taking a roll call of DRB members in attendance this evening. Scott Riley. Here. Jim Brizzolera.
Here.
Brian Curtis.
Here.
Matt Fraser is absent. The chair is present. We do have a quorum and can conduct business this evening. The following items are on the agenda for tonight's public hearing. DP 1-19.3, 19 Cliffs Court, and DP 10-03.1, 1033 Essex Road. The Development Review Board, DRB, follows rules of procedure and conducts quasi-judicial proceedings, aka public hearings, like court, pursuant to Williston Unified Development Bylaw, WDB, Chapter 6 and Appendix A. The powers of the DRB are established in and limited by this bylaw as well as state statute and expounded upon in the staff reports for each public hearing application. As volunteer public officials, we are held to the standards of the Williston Volunteer Policy and the Williston Conflict of Interest Ordinance. For any public hearing tonight, does any member wish to be excused on account of a conflict of interest? Hearing none, does any member wish to report an ex parte contact? Ex parte contact means communicating with or receiving communication from any person in regards to an application on tonight's agenda. Lastly, participants are advised that there are specific statutory requirements for becoming an interested party who can appeal a decision. Anyone wishing to be considered an interested party must provide spoken or written testimony and provide their name and mailing address. For more information, see WDB 6.8 and 24 VSA 4465. With that, our first order of business tonight is the public forum. Does anyone in attendance have a question or comment for the board not related to an agenda item tonight?
No attendees online.
Thank you, Emily. With that, we will open the public hearing for DP 21-19.3, 19 Cliffs Court in the Industrial Zoning District West. Hello, if you could please state your name and address for the record.
Certainly. I'm Nick Smith with SD Ireland. We are at 20 Ready Mix Drive in Williston, just off Industrial Ave there.
Great. Thank you, Nick. Staff goes next.
Thanks, Nate. This is a request for a discretionary permit to change the roof pitch, modify the number and quantity and location of windows and doors, modify the loading dock area, including retaining walls and grading, and location changes to bike racks, dumpsters, stairs, and ramps. This property is located at 19 Cliffs Court in the Industrial Zoning District West. Staff recommendation is to take testimony and close the public hearing, deliberate and approve the decision with findings, conclusions, and this property went through its original permitting back in 2022. Minor amendments were made in 2024 to Building A, which is the completed building next door, to make similar changes to the windows and doors. The Historic and Design Advisory Committee provided comment on this application. Their recommendations are included and will be discussed below. Public Works did not have comment, and the Fire Department did not respond to the request for comment. No comment letters from the public were received at the time of mail out nor up until this evening. In terms of the Industrial Zoning District, the building still complies with the maximum building height of 36 feet. For off-street parking and loading, they are still providing bicycle parking. It's moving from the front north side of the building to the western side of the building. The north side of the building has one customer tenant entrance, and that western side will have 3 entrances. And the building is still served by overhead doors and a loading dock as required for a large industrial building. Maintenance, the dumpster enclosures are shifting locations slightly but still hidden from view on the south side of the building. In terms of design review, the committee recommended compliance as proposed. There is a design requirement that pitch roofs are preferred, but it's acknowledged specifically in the bylaw that a flat roof may be most practical for some types of buildings, especially in industrial west. The number of windows are reduced. The windows still can create a consistent rhythm, and the size is compatible with the overall size and bulk of the building. And the primary entrance doors on the western side increase from 2 doors to 3 doors. What follows are findings of facts, conclusions of law, and conditions of approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. DRB, any questions for Emily in that report? Okay. Nick, I'm going to turn this over to you. Is there anything you'd like to add or any questions that you have?
No, Emily, as always, did a wonderful job with the overview. It's a pretty simple application, no change to building size or anything like that. In all reality, this building is going to kind of match the building A that's out there already, and I think if you've driven by that area anytime recently, I think it's a sharp building. It's in conformity to other buildings in that area as far as a U-Haul across the street. And I think that it just it fits the kind of district flow a little bit better anyway with the single pitch roof. So other than that, I can talk about anything specific, but I think Emily did a great job with the overview.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. I'm going to give everybody one last chance here. I don't think there are, but are there any questions from the board or from members of the audience? With that, I am going to close this hearing at 7:07 p.m. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Next up tonight, we have DP 10-03.1, 1033 Essex Road, Christ Memorial Church. Hello. If you could please state your names and address for us, and then we'll turn it over to staff.
Sure, I'm Greg Burton, and the property's at 1033 Essex Road in Williston.
Okay.
I'm Mike Longstreet, and I'm here with Greg for the same property. If you want my home address, or that's fine.
All right.
Same address.
Thank you both. Staff goes next.
Thanks, Nate. This is a request for a discretionary permit to modify and expand the parking lot at 1033 Essex Road in the residential zoning district. The curb cut was relocated by V-Trans. The property is about 5 acres. Staff recommendation tonight is to take testimony and close the hearing, deliberate and approve with findings, conclusions, and conditions as drafted. The DRB should discuss bicycle parking in condition number 7A. There was a discretionary permit in 2009-2010 area for the parking lot expansion. This is an amendment to that overall parking lot. At that time, as part of that parking lot expansion, the plat was dissolved between the two properties. So there's the church property and then the parsonage house. They are one property, so there's no setback line between the two, but they show up as separate properties on the lister's GIS map. So that's just something to keep in mind as part of this review. This was not subject to Conservation Commission or Historic and Design Advisory Committee review. The Public Works comments are included. The fire department did not respond to the request for comment. No public comment letters were received at the time of mail out or up until this evening. Dimensional standards, so the front yard setback to an arterial road like Route 2A is 50 feet, and this setback is measured from the property line, not the edge of pavement. Parking areas are prohibited within the front yard setback, and so we'll jump to chapter 2 about vested rights, non-conforming lots, uses, and structures. Non-conformities can remain within the setback, but cannot be expanded or increased. In most cases, a substantial change can necessitate a full or partial correction of the nonconformity. This is a special circumstance because the state right-of-way got wider, resulting more of a parking lot within the front yard setback. The DRB's power to correct nonconformities must be reasonably proportional to the scale of the development. Therefore, staff recommends approval of the parking lot reconfiguration as proposed, where the net difference of parking area within the setback is not changing or changing very minimally. And this is in line with past precedent, how parking areas and access curb cuts have been handled when the state right-of-way gets bigger, and the state is responding to the changes made by the state right-of-way. Permit exemptions, so churches and other places of worship benefit from a partial exemption from zoning. However, towns are specifically authorized to regulate setbacks, off-street parking, lighting, and landscaping, and other site design elements, provided that the regulation does not interfere with the intended functional use. So access, chapter 13, this property has 2 points of access onto Essex Road, which is a state highway. In terms of vehicular parking, a parking table is not provided because the total number of spaces are undefined due to the gravel parking lot that's not being changed as part of this proposal. A number of parking spaces is also a moot point for religious use due to intended functional use. Precedent with the Development Review Board is churches and places of worship can often have special worship services or life events like funerals and weddings that can significantly increase the demand for parking spaces. So that's why a parking table or parking count is not shown here. However, the bicycle parking is not shown for long or short-term bicycle parking on the site. The DRB should discuss if this nonconformity should be corrected as part of this approval, and the DRB must edit condition number 7A. Landscaping complies as proposed. These standards are applied to the front parking lot that is being changed. So where a parking lot has more than 24 spaces, there must be islands or medians that occupy 5% of the area. There is a median shown between this modified paved parking lot and the gravel parking lot to fulfill that requirement. And lastly, outdoor lighting. The applicant is relocating existing fixtures, which could be handled administratively, but is bundled into this application. Before I wrap up, I do want to make one note on the Public Works comments that are included as a condition of approval. Site improvements provide an opportunity to consider how surface water runoff is managed and if improvements can be made. There are places on either side of the parking lot where there's minimal landscaping shown, and final plans could incorporate a rain garden or some sort of drainage swale to help manage stormwater from this parking lot area. That's something that if the DRB wants to consider a more specific condition, they could. Otherwise, it would be adopted as condition of approval 3A, where the Public Works comments are adopted as a condition. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Give me 1 sec to read 3A again. Are there any questions from DRB for Emily?
No.
Okay, thank you. Greg and Mike, is there anything that you would like to add or any questions that you have after hearing that report? And could you speak a little bit about whether you think there is a need for a bicycle rack or something like a rain garden?
Well, why don't we start with the bike, the
Sure.
short and long-term bike first?
Okay.
You want to take biking?
Sure.
No idea, but
Yeah, currently really, people aren't traveling to the church by bike. And
Is that because you don't have bike racks?
no,
How do you know?
people just don't choose bike as a way of transportation.
Well, it's up to you to encourage them.
On a Sunday morning with the family and kind of getting dressed up, whatever, they're not really riding bikes, so.
But you're open not on Sunday mornings, you're open all day, you're open every day, you're open 7 days a week.
We are, but
You know where this is going, right?
perhaps.
Good.
But, you know, the church really primarily is open on Sundays and not really during the day. And the staff house is open during the day, but that would be it, Monday through Friday.
And rain gardens?
So it's, there is a, a drainage. The Public Works probably saw that it's a really flat project. The whole site is pretty flat. So we did what we could to mitigate any drainage. It runs off pretty good right now, even though it's flat, it sort of all drains off to the side. There is a DI.
Which way does it pitch, or which way does it run?
So if you look at the profiles, it's fairly flat, but you can see the main lot profile on page 9.
Yep.
And there's a center line drawn to represent where this profile would be. And there is a high spot right around between station 75 and 100. And from there, it's going to run either way, halfway towards the road, which there's a DI in the road. The state is putting a DI right in that, the access right there. So that's intended to take most of that. The rest of it runs off into the lawns currently, or the gravel driveway. So, I don't know what we could do for a rain garden, where it would potentially be. I think that would be a significant, amount of rework of the property. Where do you put it? How do you get the water there? You're talking something considerable as far as reworking the entire property to get water to go into one place or even to two places. It would require a lot of, extra work on the whole entire property. Would have to be regraded, I would say. So that's one reason why, we stuck with trying to minimize it the way we did by keeping it flat, but overall creating a high spot like it is now, and hoping that it will, or there is a little bit of a ditch on the north side right now. It doesn't show up very well. It probably shows a little bit in the cross section, but intended to run off into the lawn there. That is a low spot. You can see on the sheet 5, a lot of the water from the center line will roll towards the lawn on the north, and there's a little swale right there, so water would sit in there potentially. But there's not a lot of options to put it anywhere, so I don't know of any potential to make anything that would make this better. So that's what
We currently don't have any water buildup. All the snowbanks that could create that are all on the grass or on the gravel. So
No stormwater management system at all within this area? Not really, it just runs off really into the grass?
Yeah, it runs off in multiple directions, yeah.
So on the east side, it's all pretty much grass and a little bit of wood strip there. A lot of it might end up in there. There's really, it says it's a residential zone, but there's, nobody really in the back for, I rode there over almost 100 feet away before you run into anything.
Yep.
On the back side. It's all just lawn and woods.
We tried, with the snow, we tried to push it that direction for those very reasons, actually. And it's just not so unsightly.
Okay.
Do you have any questions for staff about that condition 3A that Emily referenced in regards to the Public Works comments around this? Are you guys good with that?
Can you just refresh my memory what that was?
Emily, is that something you could touch on for us?
Yes, site improvements provide an opportunity to consider how surface water runoff is managed and if improvements can be made. How is surface runoff currently managed, and how will surface water be improved following completion of the project? So I think at final plans, when you're responding to this memo, you can basically summarize, if the DRB agrees with it, summarize what was just said about how there's significant lawn space, and then describing the grading of this very flat parking lot, how water is dispersed and managed, with minimal infrastructure.
Makes sense. DRB, any other questions at the moment?
No, I'm set.
No.
Okay. You guys good? Anything else you want to cover? All right. Thank you both.
Yeah, thank you.
With that, I'm going to close this at 7:19 p.m. If there is no other business, then we will go straight into a deliberative session. All right. Thanks, everyone. All right. Thank you. We have come out of deliberative session, and the DRB is back in session at 7:33 p.m. on April 14th. Do I have a motion for DP 21-19.3, 19 Cliffs Courts.
Yes.
Thank you, Brian. Could you please read that into the record?
As authorized by WDB 6.6.3, I, Brian Curtis, move that the Williston Development Review Board, having reviewed the application submitted and all accompanying materials, including the recommendations of the town staff and the advisory boards required to comment on this application by the Williston Development Bylaw, and having heard and duly considered the testimony presented at the public hearing of April 14th, 2026, accept the findings of fact and conclusions of law for DP 21-19.3 and approve this discretionary permit subject to the conditions of approval above. This approval authorizes the applicant to file final plans, obtain approval of these plans from staff, and then seek an administrative permit for the proposed development, which must proceed in strict conformance with the plans on which this approval was based.
Thank you, Brian. Do we have a second?
I second it.
Thank you, Jim. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll take a roll call vote. Scott Riley.
Yay.
Scott. Jim Brizzolera.
Yes.
Brian Curtis.
Yay.
Chair is a yay. Motion carries. Do I have a motion for DP 10-03.1, 1033 Essex Road?
Yes. As authorized by WDB 6.6.3, I, Scott Riley, move that the Williston Development Review Board, having reviewed the application submitted and all accompanying materials, including the recommendations of the town staff and the advisory boards required to comment on this application by the Williston Development Bylaw, and having heard and duly considered the testimony presented at the public hearing of April 14th, 2026, accept the findings of fact and conclusions of law of DP 10-03.1 and approve the discretionary permit subject to the conditions of approval above. This approval authorizes the applicant to file final plans, obtain approval of these plans from staff, and then seek an administrative permit from the for the proposed development, which must proceed in strict conformance with the plans on which this approval is based. There is one modification to Condition 7A, final plan shall provide for short-term bicycle parking.
Thank you, Scott. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jim. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we will move on to approval of the minutes.
You want to call a roll on that one?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, thanks, Scott. All right, roll call on that. Scott Riley.
Yay.
Jim Brizzolera.
Yes.
Brian Curtis.
Yay.
Chair is a yay. Motion carries. We will now move on to approving the minutes from March 24th. Do we have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Go ahead.
All opposed?
No.
None opposed? Motion carries. Any further discussion?
Yeah. No, good.
Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Scott.
At what time?
At 7:38. Thank you, Scott. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thanks, everyone. Motion carries. Meeting is adjourned.
4 ayes, no nays.
4 ayes, no nays. 4 ayes, no nays. 1 day.